Hey Monica, I really liked your video last week about the question if we can compare ourselves to others, if that is a good or a bad idea. I think it does boil down to the very simple concept of what is the self and what is not, the subjective and the objective, like you were talking about. If we could just objectify these aspects, then they wouldn't be so emotionally troubling. This is harder for some people than it is for others, but it really boils down to the ability to shift the sense of boundary of the self. I'm going to demonstrate with this pen here. So this pen is not part of me. It is very separate, and I can objectively witness and perceive and observe it. And I can say it's this long and it has this. Now, if I wanted to use this pen to write, I would place it in my hand like this, and in order for my brain to properly process what to do, in order for the paper to hit here, it has to actually incorporate this pen into my sense of self. So it is like I have adopted a sixth finger. When I adopt this sixth finger, I can seamlessly write and perform and utilize and leverage this tool. So anytime we're taking something on as a tool, it's almost like we incorporate it into our sense of self. But the minute you want to examine and evaluate that tool, you have to decouple it from your sense of self in order to see it objectively. So I have this really great tool on the front of my face. It's called a nose. And when I'm breathing through it, or when I am trying not to run into things with it, it is very much a sense of myself. But if I were to want to decouple it from my sense of self, to see it objectively the same way I see this pen, I would have to pull back my sense of self the same way I would remove this pen from the six finger adoption point. I would remove my nose from the part of me that extends out to here. I would pull my sense of self back, and I would say, oh, well, this thing attached to the front of my face is this wide and this long and this and this and this and this, and I would measure all these things and be aware and observe it, but not part of myself. The difficult thing, I think, for a lot of people is that they can't easily get to that perspective or that paradigm to decouple. And in that case, when you are looking to maintain social relationships with other people as you are examining things that could potentially be emotionally attached to their sense of self, it is actually a good idea for you as an individual to expand your sense of social self, to include all of those people and their needs, so you can be aware of them the same way. If your hand hurts, you would care for it. If they're in pain trying to decouple themselves from their nose, then you would care for that. It's not necessarily a sense of a separate individual anymore. It's more that you are understanding of yourself as a collective. And it's really interesting that in order to compare body parts, how tall you are, how short you are, how thin or fat you are, it takes a combination of movements in your sense of self, because you simultaneously need to pull back your sense of self from your own body part and extend your social self to include the emotional or functional needs of other people. To do those two things in tandem is a difficult task, and if you do one more than the other, you're going to have some difficulty in those relationships. So there you go. It is a difficult thing to do, and sensitivity to other people's ability to fail to decouple is a social skill that pays off. I'll talk to you next week.